Hello guys, today with me, Jon Schumacher. Hi John.
Good to see you, Volek. I'm excited to be here and talk a little bit about webinars with you and have a little fun, Q&A, give some good tips for people. So I'm excited.
Cool, I feel the good energy. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for your time. For you guys who do not know about John, John is a webinar expert, and today we'll be talking webinars and how to get optimized, how to do webinars in an effective way. So my first question is, in one of your videos, you mentioned that it's really getting harder and harder to scale, to build the audience. And when it comes to the tendencies, yeah, how does it look like in 2020, and how do you think it will look like in 2021 when it comes to building the audience, when it comes to webinars and growing webinars? What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I think in 2020, certainly it's been a great time to use webinars in your business to not only sell and to prospect, but also to educate. And they just have a number of uses. My focus is on sales and marketing. You know, we have a sales system that we install and build for companies or optimize for companies. So if you go back and look at Google Trends, you'll see type the word webinar in, and you've seen this massive spike in interest in webinars, especially when the pandemic hit. And of course, it's cooled off a little bit, but it's still pretty prevalent. There's a new normal and a new heightened awareness to using webinars. So more businesses are using webinars than ever. I mean, I had so many businesses, investment banks, real estate companies, and consulting firms reach out to me this year. They would find me through Google or other resources I have on the internet, and want to start using webinars for business development and for sales, processes and things like that for their business, because obviously the in-person element is not as available right now, right? So it's a great time to go all in on mastering virtual selling and virtual presentations and webinars and those kind of things. And even when we go back to, I guess, a quote unquote normal world environment where people are doing more face-to-face, it's still really powerful to have webinars and have a virtual channel to add on top of that, because it's more scalable. You can reach more people quicker. There's less overhead. You can just get a lot more sales touches and for your company using that as well. So it's still a great time to do it. It's going to be a great time in 2021. It's going to be a great time in 2022. I mean, this is not going away. Technology's booming. And if your company wants to, accelerate and grow into this world that's developing before us, now is a great time to get started. So, webinars are great for businesses to use. And also consumers are spending more time at home right now. So they're also consuming more webinars too. So webinars are actually doing better now than they were even previously.
Okay. So what people should focus on to stand out and grow their audiences?
Yeah, so as far as so there's kind of two parts there. So I'll answer the first one, like what can you do to stand out, and what are some ideas for growing your audience? Like by audience, I usually mean like your email list of subscribers, maybe your social networks or referral networks or partner networks. So the first question, how do you stand out? And I think a big part of that is, how you represent yourself. Like according to the research, how you sell and your sales experience is the number one reason why your customers and clients are loyal to your brand. Why they refer other people, why they buy from you at higher price points. So if you want to stand out, you want to work on how you sell, because that's what people see before they start doing business with you. And so how can you do that? How can you stand out? Well, one way is to be that insightful guide that they're looking for. So like for me, for example, I stand out from others maybe teaching webinars because I'm a straight shooter. I don't do a lot of marketing manipulation in my sales or anything like that. I lead with insight and stuff like that versus more of like a tricky sales method or anything like that. So I found that for me, I stand out because I give a lot, I teach a lot, and I think my best buyers, and I work with, decent sized companies and sophisticated companies, they appreciate the direct approach. So part of it is your approach and how you sell. If you want to stand out in your market, optimize and improve the sales experience for your prospects, and that'll be a huge thing. And using webinars and using online presentations and online, selling strategies helps you develop that and shows your company is more human and really optimizes how you can sell. So that's a tip for everybody listening here is that stand out by how you sell, by what your company represents, how they treat their customers, how they maintain buyer safety and all these things before they even speak to your sales team. And the second question is how to grow your audience. So for me, the number one way I've grown my email database, and by the way, email is still the number one source for driving people to webinars and online events and all that kind of stuff. So you want to still be growing email. The number one way that I've grown my email list and my audience and my visibility is through joint ventures with other companies or other influencers or individuals. So what that means is basically I may host a webinar for their company. They may host one for my audience and vice versa. And I have a database of companies and partners that I'll reach out to. I host a webinar each month. So in 2021, I'll be hosting a webinar every single month, and I'll have partners that email to the registration page there to attend my webinar. And as a result of that, my email list expands, my visibility expands, and a portion of those people will want to work with me right away, and a portion of those people will want to work with me maybe down the road, So joint ventures is a great way. Collaborations with other organizations that already have your ideal client is a good strategy. And I know there's other strategies as well, but that's been my go-to over the years.
Definitely great tips. We live in a noisy, very loud world, especially when we talk about B2B. A lot of voices, and some people, and also when I was doing some webinars, we were struggling with attendance rates. So why? Because we are not the only one. So we're not the only one who sent like invitations, newsletters, and so on. That's why one thing that you are talking about in every talk and video is like funnel optimization, how to optimize the funnel and how to actually create the webinar funnel. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. You want me to start with like how to increase attendance, or what would you like me to start with on that? Because that's that could be a long rabbit hole as far as building the funnel out and stuff like that.
Yeah. So maybe let's start from attendance rates, how to increase them.
Yeah, and that's a big worry for people who are about to host webinars, or they're hosting webinars, but they're not getting as many people as they used to, which is a factor. I mean, in today's world, we live in an on-demand society, right? And so we are seeing overall, you have to do it better to get more people to attend. So a couple factors there. I put a couple notes over here. I'll make sure I touch on a few things. The first is an obvious, but it's a reminder that you obviously need to have a message and a presentation that resonates with the people in your audience, right? So the headline and the topic, and you need to know the audience and have a good message to market match in order for people to be interested and actually attend and show up, right? So I like headlines that are outcome focused, that are outcome and results focused for that person, and also have a little bit of curiosity. And I've actually shifted my headlines towards more of a direct approach. So I might say something like, learn how our clients are increasing their webinar attendance by 20% without, advertising more or something like that, right? So that's a very specific outcome that I'm claiming to share with them. And I'm basically lifting up the hood and showing them my system. So it does two things. One, it's outcome focused, so they're interested in that. And two, it has a little bit of curiosity to it. And three, it's direct. It's like, okay, come see how I'm getting my clients' results. And I actually like framing things that way more, because it cuts away anybody who it cuts away more of, I guess you'd call them the freebie seekers that are just looking to attend a webinar this way they come to the webinar knowing that they're actually going to look at something that I'm doing with my clients, which sort of frames the situation as, okay, they might want to work with me more. You know, there's no bait and switch or anything like that. So obviously the topic needs to hit. God, there's a whole rabbit hole. We have a 27-point optimization system. I don't want to go through all of those, but that's one point. Another one is, you know, certainly you can collect phone number and send text reminders. That does bump up the show up rate some. You can use a tool like Woodpecker. I know you guys have a tool that does basically personalized email automations, right? So those get higher open rates and click rates because it looks like it's coming from your Gmail, your Outlook, or whatever, right? So you can remind people before the webinar through a tool like that, and that generally will increase the attendance rate a little bit, just because more people open the emails and they're kind of, your webinar is top of mind. Video is another one. Video email is another one that I'm playing with. I'm playing with a tool called Bonjoro, which is basically a video email service. So when someone registers, I can pre-record a video for my webinar, just a little high video for 30 seconds, have that tool send that out to people. It's an added touch that people like. It does increase attendance, and it also opens conversations for actually working with me, right? So people might reply back, go, wow, thank you so much, it's amazing. You know, and then I might have an assistant or if I'm available, say, okay, great, you know, so tell me a little bit about your business. And you want to start, whenever you're doing a webinar, just as a tip, it's all about what happens before the webinar, during the webinar, and after the webinar. And you can open up client conversations before your webinar even starts. And I highly recommend that you do that too. So anyway, and then there's also, you know, reminders from your software tools and stuff. I usually will send a fair amount of reminders. I usually will send around 5 reminder emails to those that registered within the last 24 hours. I know I rarely get someone that says, okay, I got it, I'm coming. But I do see that as bumping up the registration or the attendance rates with that. So those are a few ideas for kind of funnel optimizations. But you don't need a ton of people to start. So if you're on here and you're going, geez, John, maybe I'm brand new to webinars, or I've done a few and hardly anybody shows up. You know, there are strategies that you can use to, even for a small group, especially if you sell higher price services, to make that pretty profitable. You can invite your LinkedIn connections. You can download your link. Believe you're able to download your LinkedIn connections and you know, put them into an email tool that you can invite people out to. There's ways to sort of aggregate a list of people to invite that you may not be aware of to kind of bump that number up a little bit too. So anyway, those are some kind of thoughts around that topic.
Okay, I'm interested when it comes to attendance rate. Can we say that, for example, 30%, that's a good attendance rate? And, do you have any benchmarks when it comes to this?
Yeah, it depends on the traffic source. So I'll give you ballparks though. So if you're running paid ads, like cold traffic, they'd never heard of you before, you know, running Facebook ads, let's say, or something like that, you can expect your attendance rate in many cases to be pretty low. You know, I've seen them 15% or less sometimes. You know, so it's really important. Now you can bump that number up with some strategies I shared with you, but it's still, these are people they've never heard of you. And a webinar, you're asking them to come to and give a decent amount of their time, right? It's a decent commitment of their time and focus, right? So that tends to be lower from cold ads. Joint ventures tend to be a little bit higher. These days, God, I used to get around 50%, but these days it's probably closer to like, 30 maybe percent. You might be able to bump that up with some of the strategies that I shared with you to maybe 36 or so, but between 30 and 40% attendance is pretty decent these days for warmish audiences, like from a joint venture endorsement or even your own internal house email list. Like I say, I used to get around 50. This was, 5 years ago or so. So that the attendance rates are for live events are dwindling some. That's why it's even more important to have strategies for, engaging the, let's say 60% of your prospects that don't attend. And I'll tell you this, most of your best prospects are busy people. They don't always attend live events. So you need to have strategies in place to kind of filter out and find some of those folks that might be interested in speaking to your sales team or to you, but aren't going to for what, attend a live 1 hour webinar.
Okay, so you mentioned about some like tools about reminders, follow-ups, using Woodpecker as well. So does automation play a big role in optimizing the funnel and maximizing the results, the attendance rate, and so on?
Automation, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, certainly you want to automate parts of it. So I think of a webinar as, I think people over rely on that for sales. And I think they need to be doing more, I call it kind of working the list of registrants. So if you have 300 people or 100 people register for a webinar, like you say, maybe 30 come live, what do you do with the other 70? Like, I'll actually either have an assistant, or sometimes I'll do it myself. I'll look over the email addresses, I'll look at the websites, so we'll compile a list to do some outreach to as well, right? So you can use a webinar campaign as both an outreach tool, because people are obviously registering, they're raising their hand, and they're saying, I'm interested in this topic, right? But again, they may not come live. So you need to treat your webinar as both an outreaching sort of I call them hand raiser campaigns. Like, people are raising their hand, they're interested. You need to be able to reach out and do some of that manually as well with your team. But yeah, automation certainly plays a part of it. I mean, when people register, you want a system in place to give them their access, to send them send them emails before the event, to remind them of the event. This should all be automated, right? You shouldn't have to manually do any of that. Your calendar system from the webinar. So if like your call to action is, if this sounds like something you want more help with, go over to this link, and book a call with our team, that sort of thing. Your calendar should be able to, book them, remind them, notify your sales team, get them to fill in some information about their business in a questionnaire. And I have additional layers behind that are all built into some of the funnels that we build to warm people up even before the sales call even further. But yeah, there should be elements of automation in that. But I will say, don't just rely on the automation. Don't just rely on that call to action during the webinar as your only point of sale throughout the system, right? Because you'll leave a ton of your best leads on the table.
Okay, got it. Also, when it comes to sending emails, so we have the time before the event, and you also mentioned that, like, sending engaging emails, maybe also asking some questions them. Maybe they want to hear specific answers during the webinar. That's how we also can engage people into conversation, and also to help them to attend this meeting eventually. But also there is a part after the webinar where we can send follow-ups, where next steps can be taken. And do you think using like cold email or email automation tool like Woodpecker is a good idea or not?
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. So it depends on the tool you're using, like as far as your software. Like, a lot of people are using Zoom now, or they're using GoToWebinar has been around a long time. There's a number of tools out there on the market. So some of the tools are a little more sophisticated and what's called buyer segmentation of like people's behaviors. So if people participated in a poll or they typed in the chat, they actually get upgraded as a lead score, right? So it's almost like a lead scoring system within the software. So if your software has that ability, find those top most engaged leads, have an assistant or a team member or whatever yourself do a little bit of digging on them. And then, yeah, use something like a Woodpecker or an email tool. Just send a small little nudge email out, especially if they saw your webinar and attended, and just kind of start opening those conversations up. Hey, thanks for coming to the webinar. I'd love to get your feedback on this. Tell me a little bit more about your business, and then you can kind of go a little bit back and forth, and then potentially book a call, a qualified lead from that for your sales team. So yeah, absolutely, email is great. You want to send a few follow-ups, certainly, pushing people, opening up sales conversations, potential conversations, and doing that. You can send an SMS if you're collecting as well, like phone number and things like that on the registration page. A video email, gets a high open rate as well. And then just good old phone call too. I mean, I was working with a real estate company. They were doing amazing. I'm like, okay, so what are you guys doing? They were sending people to their webinar, and for the people that watch to a certain point, you know, where they made their offer, they had a list of those people, and they were just, their sales team was just calling and following up and doing deals, you know? So, you know, again, it's a webinar. I think people get obsessed with the automation and they rely only on that.
Mm-hmm.
And they miss a lot of the biggest pieces of what they could get from the webinar campaign itself, from the whole
Mm-hmm.
thing that they hosted.
Okay. So the conclusion, webinars are definitely, that's a definitely a great tool to build and to accelerate, to grow the audience, grow the business. But of course, nowadays it should be done very in very intelligent, sophisticated, and optimized way. Jon, my last question will be: I also know that you run a webinars summit, and you actually help companies to start doing webinars or to optimize what they currently do. Could you tell a few words about that?
Yeah, so I'm the host of the Webinar Mastery Summit. I had one of your colleagues on there this year. So I host that every year. It's, to my knowledge, the largest sales webinar conference. You know, there's other, you know, Zoom hosts a big one, and there's some other big ones out there too. But as far as like sales focused, marketing focused, to my knowledge, you know, it has the most registrations. But yeah, as far as my services, like my primary domain is Jon Schumacher, just my name, Jon Schumacher.com. That's Jon, Jon, and then Schumacher, SCHUMACHER.com. Or you can just punch my name into Google, that'll come up. I basically have two main offers. One is we optimize, you know, these webinar systems, and we build these webinar systems for companies. So I have an agency team that can set up all the technology and page builds and tools and integrations and all this techie stuff, right? That most people don't want to deal with, right? They just want to, you know, talk to clients and get leads and stuff. So we basically optimize these systems. So we optimize, you know, the attendance rates, the conversion strategies before the webinar, like we talked about, during, and then after as well, right? So we help people really squeeze the most juice out of these campaigns and teach them how to do it at a masterful level. So that's one option. And then we also work with like service companies, mostly B2B service companies, you know, consulting or coaching companies who sell our higher price services, and we actually build a sales and webinar system for them to, you know, book their sales team or themselves with more qualified phone conversations and leads and stuff like that. So those are our two main offers. And again, you can check me out over at jonschumacher.com. You can also go to workwithjon.co.
I think we'll leave some details below in the description.
Yep. So workwithjon.co is where you can go if you want to just book a call. But yeah. That's
cool. Cool. Sounds great. Jon, thank you so much for your time today. Guys, if you have any questions, just drop us a line in the comments below. Have a good day. Bye-bye.